Okay, we're here with Tom Rogers in front of the map of Alviso, where TiVo is located. Tom, New York guy, did you ever think you'd be here in downtown Alviso?
I can't tell you that I heard of Alviso before.
Indeed, none of us have. But
TiVo.
Here's where TiVo is. So we had a really interesting lunch and discussion about the future of digital television, and TiVo's really seen a resurgence recently. Let's talk a little bit about that. What do you think is happening there? Because a lot of people sort of gave it up for Ghost because it was a box, it was selling itself as a box, and that wasn't a business.
Well, I wouldn't say it's not a business,
Right.
but it certainly doesn't define the entirety of the company.
Right.
And what we decided to do was to look at consumption of television more broadly and say, what is TiVo's role there? And
Right.
we decided to play that out on a number of different fields beyond selling a box at a Best Buy or a Circuit City.
Right, because TiVo, the idea is a big idea. The idea of moving television, of recording television, of having control over your television experience. One of the things we talked about was the idea where everything is going a la carte over your television set. Talk a little bit about what that means, for a company like TiVo.
We think that's a huge trend. You see what happened in the music world. You can get any song you want on any device you want it. It's a la carte, it's on demand, and television is going to go the same direction.
Right.
And people have been skeptical about that, but we see it coming together. Just about any television show or movies available via broadband today, people are connecting their TiVos via broadband.
Right.
Movie companies are approving of what we are as a device for distribution of their most premium content right to the television set. And as people are going out and buying big HD television sets, there's nothing to suggest that the television isn't going to be the center of entertainment in the home. So the question is, how do you get all that content to the TV?
Right.
We see TiVo not only as an enabler, because that's one part of the question, but once it's there and you have hundreds of thousands going to millions of options, we already have millions of individual songs you can get to your TiVo. The question is, how do you find it easily?
Right.
How do you get to what you want quickly?
Right.
And Google was necessary for the internet to get you where you wanted to go really quickly. There's going to need to be a Google-type function within the television world to get your choice when you want it and get there as quickly as you want. And that's the future that we're building toward.
Now, what's been some of the challenges at TiVo? Obviously, everybody did think of you as a concept more than anything else, and you've won some patent lawsuits, which has been great for you guys. But what's the challenge? Is it the networks? You worked at a network. You worked at NBC for years, doing a lot of initiatives for them. What are the big sort of choke points of this happening?
Well, TiVo was being defined as only being able to sell itself as a separate piece of consumer electronics.
Right, another box that you stick on the shelf.
Another box, and that was interesting, but we had to figure out how to make it more than just a DVR. Today, TiVo is a universal cable box plus a DVR plus a media center.
Right.
And so that's how we began to redefine the consumer electronics business. But then we said, you know what? We're not going to be able to grow TiVo solely on the basis of our own box. So we said, let's take the magic ingredients of TiVo, the interface, the brand, the ability to
the little guy,
and be able to port that to other people's boxes. And you see with our deals with Comcast and Cox and what we announced, TiVo on the PC last week, the ability to take TiVo as a software ingredient and allow it to recreate other people's boxes to make them more elegant and more useful. And then we said, you know what? With this way of consuming television, it's creating a massive new issue for the television industry, which is people don't watch commercials in the same way.
So how do you sell advertising against
How do you sell advertising, which is the underpinning of television? And we said, you know what? We're not going to play the role of underminer of television because that's critical to the economics. You can't both change the consumption of television.
You have nothing to TiVo.
Exactly right. And so we have been working very hard with advertisers, ad agencies, and last week we announced our first network deal to take our ad solutions, finding ways to incent people to come into ads as opposed to you just happen to be watching a television program. Let me let this truck pass.
All right. Yeah, Alviso is a lively place. Go ahead.
Well, Bay Scaffolding had to go by.
All right.
So the issue is, how do you incent people to see ads when they're not just going to see them because they're attached and they're passively watching? And we've made a lot of progress along those lines, and we've created audience measurement of ads.
Yeah, what's it called? It's called what do you call it?
ARM, our audience research measurement business.
Right.
And that has more and more adherents who are saying it's no longer good enough to say because somebody's watching the program, they're watching the ad. You have to actually show them how much of ads they're watching so that it can begin to have accountability and
Right.
measurability
Right.
that the internet has, and that's
Right.
so the underpinnings of what we're creating here is
Right.
not only a la carte on-demand television, but it's how does advertising exist in this new consumption
Right.
environment.
And last question: do you think people will be watching television on the internet or internet on the television? Which one is more, or both?
Well, I think the television set will be the primary way people are entertained.
Right.
Today, so much of the content that people want to spend time with isn't available yet on a television
Right.
set, so they're watching it on a computer on the
Right.
internet.
Right.
And I think that
Tom, they're stealing it and watching it on a computer on the internet.
and
Let's be specific.
we are sometimes people are figuring out
Right.
artful ways to get people to watch ads.
Right.
But in the end of the day, people aren't spending $2,000 on a beautiful flat screen set
Right.
to have the best of what they want to see not
Right.
available on that device.
Right.
And we think that has some very special issues attached to it, and that's
Right.
what we're devoting ourselves
Great. Tom, as usual, in downtown Alviso, thanks so much.
to. Thanks for having me.